Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Christina. I am a kindergarten teacher. I share lots about teacher life here, and I also just moved to Madrid, Spain to teach at an American school. So a lot has been going on recently. I will link one of my vlogs up here so that you can see. Today's video is going to be another podcast episode, video type of situation, and I'm so excited because I finally have my podcasting area set up. I just got this chair from Amazon. I have my whole setup here. I'm so excited. I feel like this is a cute little corner. I need to add some decor to this wall, but I have lots of fun pictures here that I feel like are really cute. Yes, today's video is going to be just a video recording of the podcast. If you're new and don't know about the podcast, it is called Teaching in Your 20s, and it is available on Spotify and Apple. And yeah, I just share some teacher advice, talk about the reality of being a teacher in your 20s, which is, it's really insane out here. But I hope you guys enjoy, and if you guys do like this style video, please let me know in the comments, and I also will put a link in the description to the podcast so that you guys can access it. But I'm gonna get all set up and we will jump into today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Teaching in Your 20s podcast. I am your host, Christina Himmelho, and in today's episode, I really just want to chit chat about how crazy it is to be a teacher in your 20s. You really just are trying to figure out your life while you're being a teacher and being responsible for other children's lives. How absolutely crazy it can be and how hard it can be sometimes with the responsibility that we feel to play a big role in these kids' lives. We have a lot of influence on children and we're still trying to figure ourselves out in the process. I kind of just want to talk about a couple of things that have been on my mind recently. I don't know, maybe some story time. Hopefully you guys can relate to this episode. It's definitely more chit-chatty, not as much advice being given in this episode, just more talking about my life. But yes, I hope you guys enjoy, and let's just get straight into it. I feel like the first thing that's been on my mind a lot is just how I really feel like your 20s are a very transitional period in your life where you are trying to figure out what you even want to do with your life, where you want to live, the people that you're surrounding yourself with. There's a lot of change that happens post-grad. It can be really difficult and you probably will go through a lot of big changes, and trying to still maintain that teacher persona at work that's an adult figure who has their stuff figured out and is there to be a role model for other children. It can be hard sometimes when you feel like you don't have it together, especially with the move that I've recently had to Spain and just trying to set up my apartment, do so many adult things. It's been really chaotic and crazy, and things even moving to a new city and trying to make new friends. It's difficult out here, being in your 20s trying to make new friends. I'm very grateful to be in Madrid and be in such an international city because I have made a good amount of friends, but I feel like even then, the adjustment from having people maybe in your hometown or out of college, and then everybody moves away, everybody moves to different places, and then you're kind of on your own and you're trying to, fill your cup after work. I've talked about that so many times on my podcast. You're trying to bring positivity into your life, you're trying to be social, trying to take care of yourself, but also everything is so new and so different. We're in a transition period in our lives, and that can make it really hard to after work feel a lot of fulfillment sometimes. I feel like that sounds dramatic, but I don't know if you guys can even relate to what I'm talking about. As far as moving to a new city, it can be really challenging to adjust and to make new friends and all of that craziness, and also show up to work and be in a good mood and be a happy, healthy teacher for your kids. And it's just, I feel like I always am doubting what I'm doing with my life, and it's just so weird. Now that I've moved back to Spain, I obviously love it here. I love Spain so much, but there's always an internal battle within myself where I'm number one, do I want to teach my entire life? And number two, do I want to live in Spain my entire life? And I feel like that's where I get caught up in an internal battle of like, oh, there's so many pros to living here and I love it so much here. Do I want to teach my entire life? Obviously, I love teaching, but sometimes it feels like it's not sustainable for my entire life. Like, I will think about the fact that these teachers out here that have children, you guys are like the superheroes. I do not know how you guys do it, because that's what I think about when I think about teaching being my long-term career. I think about the fact that I am with children all day long, and then to come home to your own kids, that sounds exhausting, because I talk a lot about on the podcast about how I feel like I have to really distance myself from teaching outside of my work day so that I am not getting burnt out. But I just can't imagine coming home and having to deal with like my own children. I don't know how people have the energy to do that. Obviously people do, because people do it, but it just seems crazy to me. There's always so many things on my mind as a young teacher, and I don't know if you guys can relate to that, like feeling of not knowing if teaching is going to be your long-term career, but then also being like, well, what else would I do if I wasn't a teacher? But I feel like that's been like on my mind recently, and I know there's so many other careers out there and stuff like that, but I really do truly enjoy it. But it's just like being in your 20s, I just am constantly questioning my life every second of every day. That's dramatic. It's not every second of every day, but I feel like I'm always questioning my life. And I also was talking to one of my friends recently who just got a job as a middle school teacher. And she was like, I fully feel like a fraud right now because, you know, we both are we feel so young, and especially with communicating with parents sometimes, it can really feel like you are a fraud because you haven't been doing this for very long. That's another big thing about being a young teacher, is like feeling the pressure. And it's not even that the parents are putting it on us. I think it's just something that we internally feel. Like, how are we authorized to be deciding all of these things in the classroom and being in charge of all of these children? But like, I mean, we got our education in it. There's so many young teachers out there and we're qualified for it. But sometimes it really can feel like you are a fraud. And it's also so crazy being so young as a teacher and having like parent-teacher conferences with parents that are so much older than you. And you're like telling them about the progress that their children are having in class. And it almost feels like, not that you're a superior, but like they're coming to you for advice. Obviously, like, I've never had a child, so it's a little bit mind-blowing, and those are definitely points where I'm like, how is this real? How am I actually a full-time teacher? We were just talking about how it can feel so much like you're a fraud, and I don't know if that's like, what is that syndrome? Imposter syndrome? I guess it kind of is imposter syndrome because we feel too young to be doing the job that we're doing. For me, as I teach more, I am more comfortable in those situations where I do still feel very young, but at least for parent-teacher conferences, I'm like, I know what I'm talking about now. I know that I'm doing the best that I can with their child, and I've specialized in this. Like, even just after teaching for a year, I feel so much more at ease with a lot of the imposter syndrome, or a lot of the just like feeling so young to be a teacher. And I also feel like it helps a lot this year that I'm surrounded by a lot of young teachers. Like, most of the teachers at the school that I'm working at right now are really young. So I think that helps with my imposter syndrome and my feeling like a fraud. Because at my old school, I was working with a lot of veteran teachers. And I think that added to my like feeling of being a child teaching children. But the other thing that I always think about being a teacher is how much I feel like I'm living a double life. On the weekends, especially now that I moved back to Spain, on the weekends I'm like traveling. I just took a trip to the south of France with one of my friends, and I'm like going out, I'm living my life. I'm a lot of things that I feel like don't necessarily align with my teacher persona, but that are more just like Christina. Like, that's just me and myself, and it's not Miss Himmelho. I also, growing up, have always had the image of a teacher as being like a mom, basically. I feel like that's like what my idea of a teacher was, is like someone who teaches, has kids, goes home, takes care of her kids. But in reality, like, here I am in Spain. I'm a teacher. I obviously don't have children. I'm living with like not random roommates, a couple random roommates, and I'm living in like a big city. I'm going out a lot. I'm exploring new cities, traveling, like going to get drinks. And I feel like that's just never what I've imagined teachers to be. And I think, you know, society as well has painted a picture of teachers as to be very different than what reality is. But I feel like that's also just like learning what it is like to be in your 20s, because even my friends that have like corporate jobs, I feel like it's like you have your job persona and then you have your person outside of your job that is like someone completely different. Maybe not like completely different, but I also feel like in corporate America, at least, I don't know why I always think of corporate America, like business America, or I guess just, it doesn't even have to be America, like business life. I feel like it's so common to be like going out with your coworkers. And, you know, that wasn't a big part of my life my first year teaching, just because I think a lot of the people that I taught with were at different stages in their life. But now, like, I'm going Fridays for Friday drinks after work. And, you know, I think it's actually really cool that I feel like as a society, we're starting to, you know, integrate both our job and our personal life. Like, we're starting to accept it more, if that makes sense. I don't feel like it's as taboo to me for me to be saying, oh, I'm a teacher and like I go out on the weekends. Like, that seems normal now. It really truly is a double life. Fridays is when I fully feel the double life in its fullest effect, because I will be at work all day, like with my kids, teaching them and singing songs with them. And I think especially since I teach like such young kids, it's like such a big contrast. And then like after work, I'll be like going out on the town in Madrid, catching up with my friends, having some drinks, having some tapas, and just like enjoying my life. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. But I think it's really funny. Like, there was this video I saw on TikTok of this girl like at a club at like 2 a.m. and then at 7 a.m. she was like, or not 7, at 8 a.m. she was like singing the ABC song with her kindergarten class. And I just find it so comical, but that's so accurate and so real for us teachers in our 20s, us who are teaching in our 20s. Like, that's what it is. But on more of a serious note, I also have been contemplating just how sometimes we have to really try so hard to leave our personal life outside of the classroom. And I think that goes with any job, really. I feel like you have to be professional and like cover up a lot of things, like if you're going through something really difficult. And something that I especially like thought about, which I guess I haven't really talked about on the podcast at all, is more like relationship things. Because in your 20s, like I said, as a child, my childhood, I grew up thinking that teachers like had husbands and they had their kids and they had their little family and that was it. But being a teacher in your 20s, I don't know how many of you out there are like in serious long-term relationships, but I'm not. And so it's like trying to figure out your dating life, and you might be going on a date on a Tuesday night and then having work the next day, and then you might go on a date with somebody else the next week, and I don't know. And this also ties back to something that I saw on TikTok. Clearly, I'm spending too much time on TikTok, but this girl that was like in her classroom in the morning, and she was like, when you have to stop yourself from crying over a situationship because you need to be responsible for 20 kids. I'm like, that is so accurate to being in your 20s. And also just like how difficult it can be if you're going through, I don't know, like a breakup or something, and you're having to be a teacher. Oh my gosh, my heart goes out to you, because I did that actually the first time I moved to Spain. I went through a really difficult breakup, and it was like one of the first times that I'd ever felt like I cannot get out of bed this morning and go to work. At that point, I wasn't the full-time teacher, but there were some classes where I was teaching and like running the activities and all of that stuff. That's when I was an aux in Spain, and I was an assistant basically. And I just remember like how hard it was to try to pull myself together before teaching a lesson. And obviously, like, I think that work is a great distraction, but I think it's hard when our job is so, like, we're up front and center. We can't just like sit at a computer, stay quiet, and be like in a bad mood, like not have to talk to people. Like we have to be very sociable. There's a lot of things that we have to deal with and a lot of patience that we have to have. And when you're going through something like that, it's like all you want to do is lie in bed and not hear anything. And then you go to work with your 20 kids and you're so overstimulated that it is so hard and so exhausting, especially after you're like so emotionally exhausted after a breakup that you are just like, I don't want to be here right now and I need a break because teaching is already so emotionally exhausting. We have to like put on a facade and cover up our emotions in order to like be a good role model for these students. And I think about how my students pick up so much on my energy levels and how I'm feeling. Like these kids are so observant. And one of the times that I really realized that they really picked up on every little thing that I did is that I have these 2 necklaces that I wear like pretty much every single day. One of them is like a little heart necklace that my mom, my sister, and I have, and then another one is one that I got while I was in Madrid. One day, one of my students, I guess I was like fidgeting with them a lot, like playing with them, and she was like, why are you touching your necklaces like that? And like I do that as like a nervous, anxious, like fidget. That's one of my little like things that I do. And I'm like, these kids they pick up on every little thing. And I'm not saying that every single day, like as teachers, we have to have a good day, but it's so shocking how much these kids can pick up on and how you kind of have to be really careful with like how you present yourself and how you act. But also I am very much an advocate for like telling your kids when you have a bad day. Like I make sure to tell my kids when I have a bad day or like if I'm feeling sick, because I think it's important for them to know that not every single day as humans are we going to have good days. And it's important for them to know like when you're frustrated and things like that. Like I think it just shows our humanity. We're young teachers out here trying to figure out our lives, trying to figure out our relationship life. It can be very challenging balancing that with being a teacher specifically, because teaching just takes so much out of you. I also always wonder, not that I wonder, but I feel like there still exists like a stigma against teachers. Like if you tell somebody that you're interested in or dating that you're a teacher, like automatically it's like, oh, you don't make much money at all and like whatever. Like I feel like people really create like an image in their head of what they think you are like without even getting to know you. I was talking about that with one of my other friends earlier this week, and we were just talking about how, especially in the US, I think she had gone out like in New York or something, and the first question that people would ask her is like, oh, what do you do? Like, what do you do for work? And when she said that she had like taught in Europe and stuff like that, it's just like people will sometimes think about the money and make their judgments about you. Not that necessarily it's always a bad thing, because I feel like as teachers, we do have a very good reputation for being people that are caring and kind and giving and all of those good, lovely qualities, but we definitely do not come off as people who are money makers. Not that that should be important to anybody. Life outside of the classroom can be really difficult in your 20s because, like I said, you're trying to figure out your life, and a lot of it is difficult. It's things like losing friendships or making new friends, though also it's not all negative things, but I feel like I'm thinking of more negative things right now because it's a lot of transitions and a lot of just like, I don't know, like I feel like I've lost like a couple of friends over the years, and that has been difficult. Like friend breakups are never easy, never fun. The biggest thing I'm going through right now is just trying to figure out like what I want to do with my life, which it seems like I have it all figured out. I'm in Spain, I'm teaching, but I'm telling you, I always am like questioning if this is the right thing for me. And I think that in a way that's good, because I realize that like not everything is permanent and that I can change things when I want to. But on the other hand, it's also kind of scary, but I guess that's just like being in your 20s, figuring out your life and stuff like that before settling down. Being in Spain and living in Spain gave me a very different perspective on just life and the fact that like I don't want to settle down until I'm like 30. And I feel like when I was in the US, I was very much like, oh my gosh, I want to have kids when I'm 26. I want to be married by the time I'm 24. Here I am at 24. I do not want to be married right now. And I feel like I just have taken like a more laid back point of view and not as much of like a schedule or pressure for things to happen at a certain time. in my life, which I think is good. And I feel like it's just a lot of experimenting and a lot of figuring out what it is that you like in life. And also as a teacher, even like elementary, middle school, whatever you're certified in, I feel like there's so many different grade levels to try out that it's like, okay, well, if I don't want to teach kindergarten my whole life, what if I want to try to teach 5th grade or 3rd grade or middle school? I don't think I would ever teach middle school, but it's also, there's so many options, and it's just a lot of figuring out what you want to do. But I feel like a lot of the times in like the lull of figuring out what you want to do, it can be really challenging and really difficult. I hope that you guys can relate to some of the things that I'm saying in this episode. And if there are things that you want me to expand upon, like my thoughts about things, about life, about teaching, about being in your 20s, please let me know. There will be a future episode about making friends in a new city because it's difficult. Make sure that you're all caught up on all of the episodes. Make sure that you are following the podcast, and go ahead and rate the podcast. It's like a little star that you can do on Spotify. And make sure to respond to the Q&A if there's anything you want to share with me. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and on YouTube, of course. I actually am going to be uploading this podcast episode on YouTube, which is very exciting. I'm going to try to start doing that more because now I have like a good little podcast area set up, which is, I hope you guys enjoy this just like little chit chat episode about life. And I will talk to you guys in next week's episode of Teaching in Your 20s. Okay, so that was the end of that episode. Episodes are pretty short. I try to keep them like 20 to 30 minutes because I think it's just like easier to listen that way. But if you guys did enjoy, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you made it to the end of this video, congrats. It's so long, but I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.